Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this PhD Stage 1 presentation from Sriram Ramanathan. I'm really pleased to welcome Lisa Percy and Keith Heggett, who are from other parts of UTS, who are serving as the Stage 1 reviewers today. And the way that this will go is presentation from Ram, not going more than 40 minutes, aiming perhaps for 30. And then we can have some Q&A, and then we will kick everybody else out of the room except for the supervision team, which is myself and Lisa, and Alisa and Keith, and we'll have a Stage 1 Viva discussion afterwards. Okay, without further ado then, Ram, over to you. Tell us what you've been doing in your first year.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for allowing me to present my proposed research, understanding how automated feedback promotes a sense of belonging, engagement, and academic achievement in higher education. My name is Sriram Ramanathan. I'm a Stage 1 PhD candidate with the Connected Intelligence Center with the UTS Sydney. Just a bit of a brief about my background, but I'm going to spend more time talking about the motivation for the purpose and the purpose for my research. I was actually enrolled in doing a course with the Graduate Certificate of Higher Education and Learning here at UTS, where I undertook an action research project. And the purpose of the research was trying to identify what could be some of the reasons as why some of the students were studying their first course in the first subject at La Cordon Bleu, Sydney. Why was there such a high failure rate in that particular subject? Having a look at some of the reasons as to what was contributing to these challenges got me to explore and identify what could be some of the backgrounds that's contributing towards the lack of academic achievement. This helped me to explore the possibility and come up with two different options in terms of what is causing the issues, namely curricular activities and extracurricular activities and non-curricular activities. The students that I'm making reference to in this context are students from non-English speaking background who come from rote learning environment, who struggled to understand what was paraphrasing, what was in-text referencing, what was critical thinking and reflection. Additionally, they had challenges with most of them had the issue in trying to be able to come to terms with acclimatizing to living by themselves, let alone washing their own clothes, cooking their own food. Yes, there was an issue. So as a result, issues happening outside the environment of learning and learning contributed to the lack of academic engagement within the environment as well. So this led me to believe as to what I could do to contribute to improve the levels of engagement. And that led me to understand that maybe I should focus on something which is very close to my heart, which is belonging, and what I can do to contribute to improve the sense of belonging. Let me introduce you to what is belonging. Belonging is defined, it's a trait, it's a psychological need, it's a feeling, it's an expression, it is beyond the feeling of warmth. Belonging itself is multifaceted. It appears and manifests itself different ways in different people at different stages, stimulated by impulses that gets encountered by the people that are experiencing at different times. Belonging starts in an educational environment, takes into consideration the familiarity with the learning environment, with the learning people, and the surroundings that make up the learning environment itself. This leads to the proposition of having an interpersonal belonging, where the opportunity is to be able to interact with the fellow peers, with the faculty, cements the possibility of having an interpersonal belonging. Familiarity and interpersonal belonging together provides a conduit to improve academic engagement and academic achievement. Within academic achievement itself, there are possibilities of the learners asking the question, am I doing the right course? Is this course the right course for me? Is it going to take me to the career aspirations that I've chosen to achieve? And so on. So additionally, Alan et al. Suggested a preferred way to track and capture belonging is to identify how belonging emerges from the construct of competencies, opportunities, motivations, and perceptions. Let me introduce you to the thesis context of the background of my proposed thesis, understanding how automated feedback promotes a sense of belonging, engagement, and academic achievement in higher education. I will share through the next few slides the background as to why having a sense of belonging is important in education, educators, and learners, and relevance of this for my proposed research. Belonging in a university, the first year, the first subject, sets the tone of a sense of belonging and sets the opportunity for the learners to be able to set the foot on the ground, to be able to achieve what they want to do. As alluded to earlier, the first subject of the first term in terms of the action research project at Lockhart-on-Bleu was an issue which made me resonate with this particular aspect of the belonging process. Belonging is more than a simple perceived liking or warmth. The feeling of belonging, being accepted within the learning spaces, is input from staff capacity building, where the faculty are empowered to uninhibitedly support the learners, setting them up for success, providing the opportunities to make them self-centered learners, promotes learner-centric opportunities to build their self-efficacy, which is also supported by institutional management coordination, which includes things such as library activities, academic skills, workshops, and so on. And the cusp of all of these comes into the center part of student engagement and belonging. This is the model that was provided by Foster et al. In the research in 2012. Interventions, studies have indicated, have had some opportunities to address some of the learner dispositions in improving academic grades by 6% as provided by Effenfeller et al. In 2019. However, the research did not address what could be some of the reasons the resultant interventions facilitated by learning analytics contributed to improving belonging. How can these behaviors and feelings be captured through learning analytics? Finding answers to this question can further inform the educators on what we can do to promote academic, behavioral, and cognitive engagement. As I progress through my rest of the presentation, I will share some of the literature reviews that I've undertaken, including gaps as identified, and hopefully illustrate the reason and the purpose of my research. Belonging in education. 20% of students in Australian universities are at risk of not graduating. A study that was done by me and Howells in 2019 illustrated this. Not a palatable set of statistics to be proud of. The opportunities to be able to connect between correlation between belonging and engagement is a combination of two different aspects, namely extracurricular activities and curricular activities. The curricular activities in this context relating to participating in discussion forums, participating in class, being in class, submitting the assessments on time, and so on. This, in combination with extracurricular activities, which promotes a sense of community within the learning environment, does foster and improve a sense of belonging. That is a challenge, however, to address the non-participation anxiety that is experienced by some of the learners due to their cultural inhibitions, which educators need to be aware of and try and address as they surface to the front. The key point, however, is to address the needs of the peripheral students and not just the mainstream student learners alone. Additionally, orientation and induction aim to recognize and support the student by promoting engagement and belonging and directing the learning to learner-centric behavior. UTS Sydney, similar to other universities, have got frameworks where the student's success is placed firm and center in trying to support using other aspects such as engagement, belonging, partnerships, and well-being in this context. Autonomous learning is something that is an offspring, an output that is promoted through promoting a sense of belonging. In the words of Du Tuabri, 2018, learning is belonging, learning is becoming, learning is experiencing, learning is doing, is something that they have identified as a promoter of how belonging promotes self-centered learning and independent learners. Autonomous learning is also an opportunity to try and measure the opportunity through teaching excellence, which is measured in multiple formats. Some of these are student satisfaction, retention, employability, and another measure, learning gain. The key point, however, is the opportunity for the educators to not only provide learning that fits into the learning environment, but to take the skills, take it beyond the realms of the learning environment into the industry and create lifelong learners. One of the key drivers that promotes a sense of belonging is engagement. Engagement and belonging are bidirectional and support each other, according to research that I have read. Universities need to have engagement and belonging firmly embedded in their mission and their vision statements. Learner belonging perceptions, as seen from the slide, as provided by the model of classroom supportive motivation by Zumbrun et al. In 2014, the sense of belonging needs to be firmly in place before the constructs of self-efficacy and task value can be executed. A sense of belonging cemented properly and firmly helps to promote and improve self-efficacy. A strong self-efficacy then helps the execution of the tasks through the process of engagement and in the ultimate achievement as a conduit for academic achievement. Engagement extends beyond the classroom domain. Engagement itself, as provided by Kahu in 2013, has got three factors, namely affective engagement, cognitive engagement, and behavioral engagement. Affective engagement links the learner to the behavior, to the faculty, the environment, and the cohort, and influences the willingness to study. Whereas the behavioral engagement talks about the engagement within the classroom environment and the learner dispositions, whereas cognitive engagement takes into consideration of mastering of the skills, where the learners take the information from the learning environment beyond the classrooms, becoming lifelong learners, something that I alluded to earlier. Engagement is multifaceted, very similar to a sense of belonging too. In the literature I've seen so far, there are plenty of information that has been provided. What were some of the factors that promotes and influence belonging? Through my research, however, I intend to identify what could be some additional factors that can promote a sense of belonging, especially in the first year cohort. Next, I'm going to talk about some of the challenges to belonging. Belonging has been a challenge and has been exacerbated due to the onset of pandemic and also because of the hybrid learning environment that still prevails in a lot of universities. The reasons for not feeling belonged could be anything related to academic issues, incongruity, lack of acknowledgement of individuals and their individuality, missing familiar social and academic surroundings, cultural and language issues, personal interests, and so on. Lack of acknowledgement, according to Butler 2021, creates a sense of unbelonging. Transitioning into universities takes into consideration where the learner and the learning provider co-create and carve out the opportunities to be able to set up an environment which creates a sense of belonging, engagement, which is cohesive and coherent to be able to achieve academic opportunities. It's a relationship, and the emphasis of the pedagogy of belonging in this context, as provided by Malley, is emphatic, simply because it promotes a strong engagement and a sense of belonging through the process. $20 million was the estimated cost of attrition due to the lack of sense of belonging globally, as provided by Clark and Wilson in 2017. Not something that we should be proud of. However, the important thing in this context is try and figure out that how we as educators can put measures in place to address the lack of belonging and do our bit to contribute to reducing this figure from where it is right now. In the Belongings Project model of undergraduate student experience, as provided by Morrison et al. In 2013, they provided the fact that in year one is sow the seeds of creating a sense of belonging. This then grows into and metamorphosizes into year two. And as we go into year three and beyond, it blossoms into creating a strong sense of belonging, engagement, and academic achievement, which ultimately leads and provides a conduit for creating lifelong learners. There is a lack of identified research that correlates between sense of belonging, engagement, and academic achievement, as I've seen from the literature so far. Another aspect that creates a sense of belonging or a detractor is stress. Students navigate the three foci of belonging, namely being, belonging, and becoming, as they transition into higher education. Sense of belonging should be viewed through multiple lenses, similar to developing learning as a belonging, learning as becoming, learning as experiencing, learning as doing, as alluded to in one of my earlier slides. Opportunities to measure and promote a sense of belonging at each focal point helps to reduce student engagement and attrition. Student receptivity is a key driver that is promoted by faculty engagement and pedagogical practices, which helps to cement the opportunity of including both the learners and the learning providers in providing a sense of belonging. And there are some other aspects that actually cause an element of dissatisfaction or unbelonging, also relate to stigmatization, which could be happening in many universities or major education providers unbeknown to each of them. There are triggers within the learning management systems which identifies some of the lack of engagement and lack of belonging. Some of them could be the lack of the absence in classes, lack of participation, lack of submissions for attendance, and so on and so forth, what could all be triggers that could serve as signals of unbelonging. And this here is where learning analytics can assist, as the lack of belonging informs learning analytics being informed by the lack of belonging itself. There's a lack of identified research, however, that correlates between a sense of belonging, engagement, and academic achievement. Learning analytics and belonging. Learning analytics has had some success in predicting learner engagement. There are opportunities within the learning management systems, such as digital traces and other learning management system engagement triggers, such as signals and monsters that have been used by faculty increasingly provide support to students with greater success and have shown how they improve learner engagement. In facilitating the data-driven decision-making, such as adaptations to pedagogical practices and methods, personalization could be one of the methods that could be used. However, the correlation between automated feedback, a sense of belonging, and academic achievement is limited, and a gap exists. Student Advisory Recommender Agent, Sarah, promotes this information of personalizing messages and how Mosavi al proved in their research that it helps to improve a level of engagement. Pedagogical monitoring of learners is another example that helps to improve learner engagement by being aware of what is going on through the learning management system and the signals that are coming out from those learning management systems. Programs such as OnTasks have improved engagement through the provision of personalized automated feedback. However, there is a gap wherein there is a lack of validated information that has explored a student's belonging, engagement, and academic achievement. This brings me to these research gaps that I've identified through what I have illustrated in my research review so far. I will be sharing them in the next couple of slides. Lack of information on transitioning of first-year students. I believe more research could be undertaken to illustrate the benefits of transitioning for developing a learner's sense of belonging. What are some of the identifiers of disengagement and lack of belonging, and how can automated feedback help us to address this? Another gap that I identified is identifying the impact of adaptations to pedagogical practices. One of the things that I alluded to earlier is the use of personalized messages. How can personalized messages and the providers of the personalized messages and the interpretation of those personalized messages, how can they inform the pedagogical practices? How can they inform the opportunities to be able to improve a sense of belonging is something that I would love to explore and improve learner engagement and belonging eventually. Additionally, as mentioned earlier, belonging and engagement are bidirectional. The nature of belonging, how does learning analytics inform engagement, a sense of belonging, and what are the influences in academic achievement? There is also limited research on how automated feedback induces a sense of belonging and the promotion of academic achievement. There is no clear correlation between student participation in digital activities, digital places such as discussion forums, for instance, and I would love to be able to explore the possibility of how this actually informs a sense of belonging and promotes and achieves academic gains. The next is the proposed thesis map for my thesis, and I've identified 4 questions to include as part of my proposed research. What I will do in the next few slides, I'll try and explain what some of these questions are and how they relate to, and what I'm going to do to try and what methodologies I'm going to be using to try and address finding answers to these questions. Research question 1 relates to how we can synthesize the literature on belonging to identify opportunities for learning analytics. As part of this process, what I've done is, along with my colleagues here at the Connected Intelligence Center, we created a directed acyclic graph, or DAG as it's commonly referred to, a causal picture of what causes what. A DAG, as provided by the research undertaken by Hicks et al., emphasizes the causal relationship between 2 variables. As in the process of distilling the literature, the DAG that was created focuses on the opportunities to identify student expectations as being influenced by 2 separate factors, namely academic background and cultural background. Student expectations then influence the level of stress. Stress is experienced by learners, whether they're starting the first subject in the first degree of an undergraduate program, postgraduate program, or for that matter, a postdoctoral research program similar to me. Academic background and cultural background also influence academic belonging and interpersonal belonging in their own way. Academic belonging and interpersonal belonging are also influenced by stress. They also promote self-efficacy. Academic belonging, interpersonal belonging also promotes engagement. The combination of self-efficacy, along with both belongings, interpersonal and academic, promote engagement, which becomes a conduit for sound academic achievement. So the DAG helped me to synthesize and understand what could be some of the articles that I've read, what sort of contributions that I've made by the different researchers to help me to infer what are some of the factors that can actually cause what, to help to understand the conduit to achieve academic engagement. The process was undertaken by having read so far about 356 papers and articles. This brings me to the next slide, where I will share what are some of the work that I've done so far. One of the ethics approved pilot study that's undertaken in 2022 was for a large accounting cohort. It had about 730 students covering 2 subjects in accounting. We administered a completely voluntary self-reported survey, which included 31 questions, 29 of which were Likert scale responses, and 2 of them are free-form responses. From the Likert scale responses, 5 subscales emerged, namely belonging accepted, belonging noticed, respected, academic belonging, and self-efficacy. The total feedback, so I beg your pardon, out of the response rate, out of the 725, there was a 95% response rate for these for the survey, for the Likert responses, and a 67% response rate for the free-form responses. What I will do is I will share with you in the next few slides the mixed method analysis that was undertaken both qualitatively and quantitatively to analyze and explore the information from this exploratory mini case study. First and foremost, let me share some of the questions that was identified for the Likert scale responses, taking into consideration sense of belonging, academic belonging, and self-efficacy. The questions themselves were contributed from the inputs from the psychological sense of school membership survey as adapted from Goodenough in 1993. Academic belonging was provided from information from a research that was undertaken by Kahu et al. In 2022, and self-efficacy was adapted from the motivated strategies for learning questionnaire MSLQ undertaken by Duncan and McKeechee in 2005. Statistical package for social sciences was used to quantitatively analyze the numerical data collected from the mini study. This initial analysis of the data found some subscales of belonging, which I've alluded to earlier, namely items being respected, 5 items being accepted, and 4 items being noticed or valued within the belonging itself. The matrix basically identified items loading of 0.4 for the 3 components, and that forced the solution is a 3-factor solution in the context of the data that was being analyzed. Additionally, these are the information that I will share with you in the next few slides on what those subscales were. Cronbach Alpha's reliability score has also been provided, 0.816 in this context for being respected, and the questions appear underneath them. Similarly, for being accepted, a subscale factor of 5 items, the Cronbach Alpha reliability score was 0.818 with the questions that appear underneath. And for being noticed and valued, the Cronbach Alpha score was 0.673 with the questions appearing below. For academic belonging, we had a Cronbach Alpha's reliability score of 0.628 with the questions that related to those. And self-efficacy had a Cronbach Alpha's reliability score of 0.915 and the questions that appear underneath there. Next is an information that we had to put together because not all variables in the data set were found to be normally distributed. So we created a Spearman correlation analysis to determine the score itself and analyze the score. As shown in the table, correlations among the belonging subscales except academic belonging were larger than 0.5. There is information relating to each of the subscales, namely, and also academic belonging and self-efficacy. This will be taken into consideration in further analysis that will be pursued subsequent to this discussion today. The free-form questions for the qualitative analysis were 2 predominantly. What do you feel the most important factors that contributed to a sense of belonging in this subject? And can you tell us a bit more about how you feel about accounting? For the purpose of my analysis and exploratory analysis that was done, I only focus on the first question, with the second question that will be explored further during the research. The qualitative data analysis were undertaken using 2 different qualitative analysis platforms, NVivo and linguistic inquiry word count, or LUC as it's commonly referred to. I'll go through some of this information in the next few slides. The automated text analysis was done using NVivo, which basically generates the cluster analysis. As a result, the cluster analysis created what is known as a dendrogram. The dendrogram illustrates what some of the similarities of text patterns from within a document, which helps me as a researcher to analyze and to draw conclusions. This is a very basic insight in giving some information about what conclusions can be drawn from the analysis and interpretation of the results, which needs to be further explored and analyzed in more detail. The automated text analysis helped the understanding of most frequently used words, for example, and helped me to understand what are some of the words and phrases that are promoting a sense of belonging in this context. This was further explored using the concept map within the NVivo process, where it's a top-down coding, where me as a researcher were created nodes, as you can see on the screen, respect and acceptance, faculty and tutor presence and support, and so on and so forth. A concept map is a visual representation that helps with the logical analysis. It also helps me to interpret how to articulate the relationships of the concepts. It also sets the tone for further discussion and analysis of the data. The top-down coding helped to map the codes and how they impact or influence each other. The relationship analysis also helped me to make meaning of what was actually being said from the different words and the phrases from within the context of the information. These are some of the phrases that was from the free-form feedback that was analyzed and coded by me. For example, engaging tutorials and lectures, the codes that were used for the purpose of this coding was faculty and tutor presence and support that induces collaborative work, leading to cognitive engagement. Additionally, we used the linguistic information inquiry word count, LUC, as it's referred to. It's a tried and tested program that uses language expression as a marker for cognitive processes and helps to make sense of some of the meanings that is being extracted. For example, some of the words as they appear within the context of the content being analyzed, laugh, happy, and joyful, get thematically coded or put into themes as a positive emotion. Brother, mother, and uncle, for example, gets coded into the theme of a family. Luke uses also the meaning extraction method. The meaning extraction method is a process where large content being analyzed gets simplified by removing smaller words such as prepositions and pronouns without compromising the quality of the content. And it organizes the words and phrases into themes. It helps to validate the inferences about the words and the content and the meaning of it. As a researcher, it helps me to explain the covariation observed between the components and why, for instance, understanding the additional indicators of the variables and so on. This preliminary findings helps me to get a bit of an idea, and I will share with you in the screen next what was actually created through Luke, through the bottom-up coding process. What we did in this context was the information that came out of Luke was then exported into SPSS. So there's a combination of both qualitative and quantitative analysis that was demonstrated in this context. The principal component analysis analyzed and gave information, as you can see on the left-hand side, some of the words and phrases as generated through the bottom-up coding process, automated process 3 in Luke. Then me, as a researcher, identified what these words mean, going back and having a look at the sentences which contributed to these words. And then that helped me to classify and code them appropriately into the components as you see on top of the screen. For example, question, subject, belong, sense, and contribute. When we went and had a look at some of the sentences that were contributing to these words, helped me to make a decision in terms of the component that was relevant in this context, able to contribute in class. Similarly, tutorial and tutor helped me to hone in on the component, namely tutor supporting the learning in tutorials. This helps to understand and evaluate the themes as being generated for further exploration as we continue through the process of the research. What I also did as part of this process was to do a comparison between NVivo codes, which was what I created myself, and the automated codes that came through the Luke analysis of the same context and the content itself. It basically indicated that the topic modeling results through Luke, bottom-up coding, and having strong alignment to the concept map, top-down coding created through NVivo. This reiterates the tightness of the analysis using two different qualitative analysis methods, and they're aligned to a large extent. So overall conclusions and next steps is to identify what possible correlations with data from Canvas, how to read the different clusters and how they engage with the feedback, read and act, and what the students take on the feedback from on task, for example, and report a stronger belonging, and if so, why they did not engage and who did not engage, and so on and so forth. So that'll be something that will pursue further down through my research. With that, comes to the last part of my presentation, where I will present the proposed research questions. Research question 1, I've already shared with you in terms of the context of what it is, how and what it was done. It's basically synthesizing and distillation of the literature. It is important to, however, reiterate that research questions 1 informs research question 2, and information from both research questions 1 and 2 informs research questions 3. Research question 2, where digital activity traces serve as proxies for student engagement and belonging. Mapping the causal, having a look at the qualitative analysis tools such as Look and NVivo, amongst others, will be used in the analysis of the data. This will help me and provide me the opportunity to establish correlations between the data, identify how this informs the research question through a regression analysis. Research question 3, in what ways can we measure the impact of automated feedback on university student sense of belonging? The intention is to do the process through the undertaking surveys, do a survey at the beginning of the term and one at the end of the term, and try and analyze the data from the surveys and correlate this to the Canvas gradebook and analyze them. And the codes will be tested for interrelated reliability to ensure the authenticity and the credibility of the data. The information from this will be illustrated after analysis visually to assist the educators to improve learner sense of belonging. And lastly, faculty. How can I forget the faculty, who are key drivers for promoting these messages in the context of my research? I will be interviewing the faculty to try and understand what some of the messages that were used, whether the message is relevant, did it create a sense of belonging, how did it inform changes and adaptations to the pedagogical practices in promoting a sense of belonging, and why. So these are the 4 research questions I will be focusing on for the purpose of my research. Lastly, we also, based upon the DAG that was created earlier from the distillation and using on-task for an automated personalization of feedback, a theory-based intervention using data is what I'm illustrating up on the screen. For example, having a look at the cultural background of the students, the demographic backgrounds there, and the inputs from that point. The on-task interventions can create personalized messages that addresses the needs of the multiple levels of learners that we have. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, because stereotyping of messages can be completely misinterpreted and can be completely read the way that you don't want it to be read, causing more challenges, more stress. So to create a level of interpersonal belonging, one of the recommendations that I propose in this context is to personalize the messages using on-task to try and address the different levels of cultural backgrounds and demographics, strategically send the messages out to the people, to the students, the learners, to try and see how it can actually improve a sense of interpersonal belonging. Additionally, the lack of engagement could be learning analytics could be informing lack of engagement and academic belonging. Messages could be put in place where the personalized messaging can be sent out depending on the levels of engagement, depending on the levels of academic belonging being displayed, and try and personalize the messages strategically with the intention of trying to create a sense of belonging, engagement, and academic achievement. The messages are tailored to the situation and identified and to the identified issue, designed to address the need as identified through the processes. It is important to understand that interventions as the causal connections draws our attention to the data, which drives strategy behind the personalized messaging. Lastly, this is the thesis map. It basically summarizes some of the questions, all the questions that I've created for my research and what sort of contributions I intend to get out of these research questions, not only for this university, but education environment at large. Future steps will be finding the answers to these, as I've proposed, to identify how a learner's sense of belonging could be impacted to achieve academically and academic gains, analyzing the results of the survey, both qualitative and quantitative, based upon the information that I've provided to ensure reliability and validation of the results. This will also be supported by visual illustrations and discussions of the findings based on a scrutiny of the outcomes as revealed by the data analysis. Thank you very much. I look forward to hearing from you and your questions so that I can clarify the purpose of my research.
Okay, thank you very much, Ram.